Hey, y'all, welcome back to another episode of Alabama Unfiltered. I'm your host, Jason Will. If this is your first time joining us, here's what you need to know about this podcast. We are dedicated to fact-checking conservative news outlets, right-wing conservative news outlets here in the state of Alabama, namely 1819 and Yellowhammer. You know, they put out a lot of misleading information, and we've got another prime example right now. We're going to be focusing on an article that was published on February 11th of 2026 titled Tuberville Calls on Republicans to Pass the SAVE Act. If you're here illegally, you should not be voting in our elections, period. That's a direct quote from Tommy Tuberville. Before we really dive into just the ridiculousness of the SAVE Act, this article, and Tommy Tuberville in general, I really want you guys to, my goal here is to inspire you to think about this issue, but also do some deep research and start with the data. Okay, so you've got to, you don't have to, but you should. You should go back to the 2020 election, all the court cases that were thrown out in that regard. There's no evidence that the election was stolen from Trump. In fact, we talk about every accusation is an admission on the side or on the part of MAGA Republicans, and that's exactly what this is, okay? So every allegation of election fraud is an admission on the part of Trump, the Trump administration, the cronies, the MAGA cult, all of them, right? And they just keep on with this. They keep on not letting it go. And if the data doesn't support, the evidence doesn't support these accusations and these allegations, then let's really think long and hard about what the goal here is. All right? There are more Democrats or left-leaning people, whether they're Democrats or independents. Democrats and independents combined are not huge fans of Donald Trump. That's where the majority of the polling gets dragged down to like these lower or lowest levels in history for Donald Trump, is because MAGA Republicans are increasingly in the minority. And these folks want to stay in power. And it's not going to be possible by playing fair. So this is what the SAVE Act is all about. It's all about creating hurdles, roadblocks, making it more difficult for people to vote. It's all about disenfranchising voters who would most likely vote blue. This is what it's all about, folks. All right, so let's get into it. A couple things I want to point out. All right, so the core question that I want you guys to consider is this issue really about election integrity, or is it about Washington Republicans trying to control the voting process here in the United States? And you should understand that when people talk about democracies and what qualifies a nation to be a democracy, the nucleus of it is in the free, fairness, and security of the election process. So by them questioning this, it has really done a lot of damage to the trust that Americans have in our electoral process. But the Trump administration has destroyed the trust we have in the Department of Justice. I mean, they're just like American institutions, American precedents, the Constitution, they are casting doubt. They are, creating fear and insecurity and disillusionment around a lot of our core foundational institutions that have always made America great. You see where I'm getting at here? All right, I want you to understand that the legal reality of this issue is that it's already a felony for non-citizens to vote in federal elections. This was established by the 1996 Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act. All right, subsequently, data, if you look at the data, you're going to find the smallest number of irregularities or fraud in our election systems across the nation. Let's look at Georgia as an example. Georgia has been, a hotbed for election integrity debates since 2020. And Georgia did an audit in 2022. And that audit found that 1,634 non-citizens attempted to register to vote over a 25-year period. And this audit concluded that zero of those folks were allowed to vote. All right? Just start looking at the data. You can take it, you can just focus on Alabama, or you can, take it red state and blue state at a time and look at this data. With AI, it's very easy to do research. You just ask Gemini or you ask ChatGPT to do the heavy lifting for you, and it will do it. So you really have no excuse. This takes minutes, seconds really, to get this information, and a few minutes to read it. And it's rooted in research and not opinions and lies and conspiracy theories where we see the vast majority of Washington Republicans. That's where they live. All right, so we're going to talk about the hidden tax, not only on Alabama citizens, but rural folks, married women across this nation. There are millions of married women. It's estimated that 69 million women across the country have a birth certificate that does not match their current legal name due to marriage. So they got married and they changed their surname. This is going to create problems for them when they try to register to vote. Tuberville claims that he wants fair elections, but this bill could disenfranchise thousands of legal, tax-paying Americans and Alabamians who just don't have a passport or birth certificate handy when they want to register. We should be making it as easy as possible for people to not only register to vote, but to vote. Like, people should vote on Saturday and not Tuesdays, all right? For a lot of people, they can't be late, miss work, ask for time off work to go vote. And you just see the voting numbers have consistently declined, partly because of the candidates that are running and partly because it's too much of a pain in the ass. All right, let's break it down from a constitutional states' rights perspective. All right, so the current conservative conflict, Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution gives the states the power to determine the times, places, and manner of elections. Hell, why not give people more than one day to vote? Maybe it's a Thursday through Saturday thing. Let's think about this. Let's make it easier to vote, because this is our core right as citizens of a democratic nation, is to cast our vote. That is our voice. That is our democratic power. That's all we've got in some cases, other than the power of the purse. The federal overreach. By passing the SAVE Act, Republicans are effectively inviting the federal government to dictate to Alabama how it manages its voter rolls. Now, for a states' rights Republican like Tuberville to be so eager to give Washington more power, I thought this was thought Republicans were all about less government. The hypocrisy among the MAGA nation is just outrageous. Do we really want DHS or a federal agency auditing our local boards of registrars? Do we want armed ICE agents intimidating folks at polling stations and voter registration sites? I don't think so. All right, let's look at summing this up, all right? So, performative politics. Is this performative politics? Tuberville is running for governor. He needs a red meat issue. But Alabamians deserve better than legislation that threatens our natural democratic rights as Alabamians and U.S. citizens. All right, I want the women listening out there to really focus hard on what I'm about to say. This is not just about showing ID. This is about you as a woman having to go on a scavenger hunt to find marriage licenses, divorce decrees, or court orders just to prove you are who you say you are. Just think about that for a second. You're being forced to jump through bureaucratic hoops just to exercise your right to vote, which you've had since you were 18 years old. Senator Tuberville calls it simple, common sense. I call it an insult to every hardworking woman in Alabama or across this nation for that matter, who shouldn't have to carry a folder of their life's history just to cast a vote for the future of their children. We already have laws to stop non-citizens from voting. We don't need laws that treat Alabama wives and mothers like suspects. All right, let's close out with some key stats just to anchor this and bring it home. 69 million, the number of American women whose birth certificates don't match their current legal names. 69 million, 9% of citizens. Roughly 21.3 million eligible voters lack ready access to specific documentation that provides proof of citizenship like passports or birth certificates. This is what the bill requires. The passport gap. Only about half of Americans even own a passport, and they cost between $130 and $160, which critics appropriately argue is a de facto poll tax for those who don't have their birth certificates handy. And again, I want you just to think about the folks in rural communities, folks at lower socioeconomic levels. Do they have, expendable income for this poll tax to get this birth certificate or the passport? All right, y'all, that's going to do it for this episode. I really hope this has inspired you to filter this information that is being crammed down your throat, all right? To filter it through the lens of fact-checked, fact-based, data-driven reporting, which this has just been proven to be another example of propaganda from the right that is printed and distributed through the internet, through social media memes and podcasts, you name it, and it's wrong, and that's why we're here. All right, we'll see you real soon in the next episode of Alabama Unfiltered. Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to like and rate this podcast and get in touch with us if you have a story you want us to cover, whether that be an injustice happening across the state, or you're running for a political campaign, or you've been the victim of something like an ICE raid and you're a citizen of the United States and you've been wrongfully detained. We want to hear from you in Alabama. We want to shine a light on everything that's going on across our state that is not right, that is unlawful, that is unconstitutional, and un-American.